Now, this holiday season, I'll be giving thanks to our good friends at Manscaped. Everyone loves a bit of turkey and stuffing at Christmas, myself included, but you'll look like an absolute dessert with Manscaped's Performance Package 4.0. The leaders in the below-the-belt grooming topic have blessed you with some excellent Thanksgiving dinner. Imagine talking about this over the table. What a treat. I think it's time to give thanks to the Manscaped Performance Package 4.0, and it's got so much in it, I'm going to have to get my phone up to read everything out. So you've got the Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, the Weed Whacker ear and nose hair trimmer, Crop Preserver ball deodorant. I never knew I needed that, but apparently I do. Crop Revival toner, Performance boxer briefs, and a travel bag. A travel bag as well. What a bargain. Not to mention the 4,000K spotlight LED, lights it up like a Christmas tree, and it's waterproof, so feel free to use it in the shower. Then there's the Weed Whacker with a 9,000 RPM motor for all the hairs up your nose and all the hairs in your ears, all right? This is a problem for me in particular, all right? And the amount of times I've had to pull hairs out of my nose, it kills. This is a much better solution, I think. It won't make me cry like I usually do. So get 20% off with free shipping with the code LASTLAP at manscaped.com. That's 20% off and free shipping. LASTLAP, manscaped.com. Be thankful this holiday season for the best gift from Manscaped. Your balls will thank you. Now back to the podcast. All right, you lot, don't forget to give us a follow on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And while you're at it, give us a 5-star rating. Trust me, it really does help us out. Welcome back to the Last Lap podcast. And before we get into it, shout out Charlie Norris. You won a copy of F1 22. Well done. Be like Charlie and give the podcast a 5-star rating on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, on all that good stuff. And of course, you might be watching us on the Last Lap YouTube channel. So welcome. We've just watched it was kind of meh Mexican Grand Prix, wasn't it? It wasn't a worldie. It wasn't one to remember.
I think Meh's doing it justice. I can't even lie. I'm not even going to lie.
But Checo got on the podium.
Okay, it's Meh. Yeah, no, it's right. We've reached that sort of 3.5 out of 10 threshold, I think.
And who are we joined by today?
Well, we are joined by two sensational guests once again.
Great hair from both, actually.
Yeah, solid hair, actually, from everyone involved.
Is it the same haircut?
Yeah, that's like 6 months more.
Different stages of growth. Yeah. That's sick.
Yeah,
winning.
When they said you were coming on, I grew my hair just.
Really? Oh, shit. Oh, wow.
Yo.
I should have cut mine.
But JB Cam, thank you for coming.
Yeah, we appreciate the offer. I spoke on behalf of both of them because we've got the same hair.
JB's actually fuming. JB doesn't want to be here. He's like ankle tagged.
I thought I was going to replace Cam. That's why I grew the hair out. And he turned up again.
Maybe next time. But look, I guess, the race, Max won. Incredible. You can't take it away. He's now broken the record as well. Lewis, though, I think Mercedes, in terms of pace, they weren't a million miles off, which was good to see. But then Ferrari mile off. So actually, they just kind of replaced Ferrari for this race. Now that Max has taken that record, this is a question I want to ask, and this is a bit of a rogue one, right? How close do we think we are, if not are we already there, to talking about Max in the GOAT debate, right? Not that because he's had a lot of years in F1, right?
He's thinking about the YouTube clips here.
No,
it's true. No,
I think if we're talking top 10, for sure, I think there's definitely an argument to be made there already, given his 8 years in Formula One for top 10. But where do we think he is in that conversation with you guys? Because I know, obviously, as soon as you put your top 3 out there into the world, people don't like it. But I guess JB first,
he's definitely edging closer and closer to it, isn't it? And we've got to remember, he's still really early on in his career. He's been around in Formula One for a long time, but he came in as a teenager. Yeah. So he's still probably got another 10,
Niran, he didn't have a driving license.
Yeah.
Literally. And he came in.
You'll start somewhere.
But 14 wins this season, possibly 2 more on the cards.
Yeah.
416 points. So already broken the most points in a season record. He's got a sprint race in Brazil and 2 more races. He is smashing records at this point. But is only a 2-time world champion compared to 7-time world champions, 5-time world champions that are up there?
Yeah, I think it depends, because if you're saying the GOAT, I think obviously not near there. But when you're saying they're 7-time world champion, I think Max, I love Max. I think he's amazing. Definitely in GOAT, in the conversation. But surely, like, it's only 2. You know, like you're saying, like it's 2 and 7. You've got to be at the top for a few more years for me to surpass Lewis. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, no, I kind of agree in the sense of, like, obviously it's early. Well, what age is he now? Is he 25?
25, I think, yeah.
Oh, Jesus Christ, I'm 25.
That's what I mean, there's a long time left.
Yeah, no, it's the goat. No, but like, again, yeah, we're obviously only 2 titles in, but the reality is Red Bull are gonna be strong until 2026 at least, when there's further regulation changes because engine freezing and all that. They're just not gonna become bad.
No.
So he's gonna, he's
gonna have a good shot.
He's gonna have a good shot of 3 more titles.
Yeah.
Arithmetic. 3 more titles after this, maybe 4. I think if he was to say end that spell with 5, he's still like 29 years old. I mean, for crying out loud,
undefeated.
Then we're in serious GOAT territory, I feel. Because again, like you said, he's breaking records this season, but he with his age, the only thing I'm concerned about is, when you have like footballers who like burst onto the scene really early. And then they can't actually prolong a career past like 30 sometimes. I'll be honest, wasn't the man in my head. He's pulled that one out of the stratosphere. But fair enough. I was like sort of like
clumsy legend.
Literally Michael Owen was the one I was thinking of. I guess it's a little bit.
Yeah, that's better than Marlon.
With football, it's slightly different because you're physically taxing, and injuries can come into play, not necessarily a factor in Formula One. But is that something that might hinder him moving like towards? He's not going to be driving till he's 40.
Yeah,
like Fernando Alonso maybe.
I would struggle to see his levels drop. I don't think we typically see that until, I mean, look at how Fernando's doing into his 40s and has still kept those levels. I think because he hasn't had like a time out of a seat. You could always, like when Schumacher came back into the Mercedes, he was never able to hit the levels, but they were like, the levels were so high that he'd set at Ferrari in like, when he retired at the end of 2006, it was always going to be, and to then have that time out of the sport and then come back, like, Max has talked about there is more to life than F1, but also right now in this stage, it feels like he's completely, absorbed. When he's not racing on track, he's sim racing. Like, I just think that coming up with the whole GOAT is like, it's ultimately it's a stupid debate because it's different generations. It's like comparing, Maradona to Messi. Like there's complete different generations. You can't compare them one to one.
Yeah.
And if drivers if like a Jim Clark or a Niki Lauda grew up in this era, they would, and if Verstappen and Hamilton grew up in that era, they would, probably be
different.
With their talent. But also, I guess it's like, it's a team sport. You need the car to be good. You can't just win like Ronaldo tried to win Champions Leagues with Juventus and it didn't happen. You need that facility around you. And I guess, I'm assuming from what we said, we don't think this cost cap penalty is going to hit Red Bull enough to then dislodge any potential Verstappen chances for next year and onwards.
I think Fernando Alonso is a really good driver to sort of bring up, and I was just sort of thinking about it while you were talking about Fernando. Obviously, both now 2-time world champions. Max Verstappen's just edged him out in terms of wins. He's got 34 and Alonso's got 32. So they're pretty comparable at this point in terms of like where they are. But Fernando Alonso's right at the end of his career, doesn't have any ability to really increase that win percentage or get another world title, where Verstappen is there already. If his career goes the way of Fernando Alonso and he just stays a 2-time world champion and maybe has a little bit of a dip out, is he still in that debate? Whereas if he goes the way of sort of Lewis Hamilton's and wins multiple world titles back to back to back up to 2026, like you said, then surely he's got to be in the debate then.
Yeah.
So I feel like this season is almost the turning point for Verstappen on whether or not he's going to be properly in that conversation or just kind of off
in the periphery.
I think right now, like for me, he wouldn't be like the GOAT, but I think in 3-4 years, I agree. I think he's going to go the Hamilton thing, and I think he will be regarded better than Hamilton. I believe that because I just think his mentality is just like when I watch him, I can just tell that he's fully in it, and the pressure just doesn't get him. And for someone in any sport where pressure just doesn't affect you, it's so hard to beat someone like that. Even if you, especially if you're on a worse car, like there just seems like there's nothing that will faze him. But again, he's young. There's a lot of years. But if he's like this now,
yeah, when like you said, when someone does not fear pressure at all, you then know as someone that's going up against them, I can't make a single mistake here. If I make one mistake, I'm done. And that's what it is. And that plays, the mental game then with you of kind of like, oh, wow, this guy's so consistent. He never has a day off. You know, I have to just be on my A game 100% the whole time.
And that's maybe what we've seen with Charles Leclerc this year, right?
Yeah.
Like Charles Leclerc's made those mistakes where Verstappen hasn't.
Yeah.
And that's been the turning point this season.
But I think your Alonso comparison is actually quite true, because the last time Alonso was in a race-winning car, like a car that's good enough to win a race on merit, was probably, was it 2013 when he won in Valencia? I can't remember if that was the last win he had in F1. And that was all the way back in 2013. And then since then, he's only had kind of midfield cars at best. And obviously, like, Ocon got a win, yes, but that was massively, like, thank you, Valtteri Bottas, for taking everyone out for that race. You know what I mean? Like, so you have to rely on that luck. So, yeah, I do. Basically, I look at Verstappen now and I'm just like, wow, like, the kid's 25. He's got so much experience already as well.
You know, a question I want to ask, actually, because I think we spoke about it quickly in the show, and you mentioned that, like, if he won the last 2 races, he would have a better win percentage than Michael Schumacher in 04, which is, like, kind of considered as one of, like, the most dominant seasons ever.
Yeah, so Schumacher got 13 wins, but obviously there were less races, whereas Max Verstappen can get 16 now if he wins the final 2 out of 22. And that would give him I think it's very, very close to the same win percentage.
So that is, for a start, nuts to consider an entire 22 race season, and he only doesn't win 6 of them. That's mental in my mind. Would this be the best season from an F1 driver in terms of winning the championship that we've ever seen in Formula One, if he does that? Ever.
I think one thing that plays into it possibly is that, just trying to give way to it, is last season, right? And all the stuff people were saying about Max and about he shouldn't have won it, all this, that is, and to come this season and go, like, fuck is all. I'm gonna beat it with every record, you know, like, that is what I think elevates this win. Because I think, like, obviously, you know, you heard the comment from Ted Kravitz from Sky and stuff, like, kind of disregarding and stuff. I think he's had that this whole season at the start, and he's just brushed that with the mentality, brushed it. And surely that's got to kind of feed into that a little bit, you know, because what other drivers have had that going into a season?
Yeah, of like your first championship. Yeah, no, we don't.
Yeah, that doesn't count.
Yeah.
And the season started horribly. Like, he DNF'd of 2 in the first 3 races. So, like, not only did he have all of that pressure from winning the championship, it then looked like the Red Bull was just going to blow up every other race.
Yep.
And then to turn
they got it out of their system early doors, didn't they? That's the thing. Well, yeah. So again, you mentioned that. I guess because there's 2 points here, isn't there? There's let's go with what kind of Ted Kravitz, and there's been a lot of heat this weekend around Sky Sports, and again, the word robbed. Now, obviously, look, it seems like I can't wait to get to the day when, like, no one talks about 2021, but I feel like it's going to be in like 50 years. John, we will always be talking about 2021 because it was such a incredible season, such an insane season for so many reasons. You know, Max has said he won't talk to Sky, and Red Bull said they won't talk to Sky, blah, blah, blah. Like, where does that sit with... Because we're fans at the end of the day, right? We've got a platform because people choose to watch and listen to our opinions, but we're just fans, right? It's like anyone else. Like, when someone who's representing a company like Sky says certain things, there is a different standard they're held to, and that's fair enough. And there's a degree with us as well. We've got a platform here. Things we say are held to a different standard than a regular fan in a pub. So how do we feel about Max kind of boycotting? Because I kind of see it. I do see it from both sides for sure. But I don't know. What do you boys think? Like,
you know what? The problem is, like, I get it from the Red Bull perspective of because Ted basically said Lewis Hamilton was robbed. Those were like the words, right?
Yeah.
He didn't say he felt he was robbed. Because I think if there's a very big difference here, I think if he says, yeah, Lewis Hamilton obviously having felt that he was robbed last season, then it's like, okay, I'm just pushing the words onto someone else, then I'm not actually saying them. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, you're just
And
facilitating that conversation.
Yeah, you're
not
facilitating that
putting
conversation.
yourself into it.
Yeah, because that's the problem. Like when you're on TV, especially like as a journalist or as like a presenter or something, you kind of have to have some level of impartiality, right? You can't just go, yeah, well, Lewis was robbed. That's the game is the game. Even if, like, by the rule book, he was, when you look at we're not going to get into it, but the lap car situation, whatever, Even if you think that, you can't really say it on Sky because...
Well, especially as Sky is the kind of international broadcast as well.
Yeah, it's just not a good idea, really.
I agree with you. I 100% agree with you. But also, is it not like, well, why can't Ted's notebook, why can't he show a little bit of like his... like a tiny bit of his opinion or a little bit of personality? Should you really be shunting him down for that? Because I believe like Ted's stuff does really well on like social content wise, like with YouTube and stuff. Like, do people from YouTube want to see a little bit more of an opinion in the notebook? You know, like that. Whatever. But I do agree with you. But
that's why it's tough.
So I get it from both sides.
Because you're right in terms of like that is the part of the Sky broadcast where it's a bit more like. It's a little bit less formal.
Yeah.
And he can kind of just like, just chat a bit of shit whilst he's walking down the paddock. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And it's like, that is kind of the vibe of that show. So yeah, it is a little bit difficult. What do you think about it, JB?
I think it's just one of those things, isn't it? Like, he obviously has to have a voice. And we do want to hear his opinion. And obviously, like, he's there for a reason, right? He's working for Sky for a reason. But I suppose it's different when you're getting belters from people online compared to one of the drivers actually saying, no, like, I'm not going to talk to you anymore. And I feel like probably because of how Sky works, and they probably want some interviews with Max Verstappen, considering he's just won a championship and just won a race, he's probably going to have to apologise, I imagine, Ted, in some way or another. But I feel like it's just one of those things. He said his opinion. He said what he wanted to say. Max Verstappen has obviously taken it fairly badly. And I think that's the one thing with Max Verstappen. He has such a different mentality on and off the track. Like, we touched upon it, right? You said on the track, under pressure, nothing happens. Like, he just doesn't change whatsoever. He's just so consistent. We've seen a few times Max Verstappen be, I don't know, a little bit petulant off the track, or maybe just... He clearly doesn't enjoy the media side of things. Like, he doesn't work with Netflix on the Drive to Survive stuff. If anything, he's just like, okay, that's just another media thing I don't need to do. And like, he's probably just like, I'm out, lads.
But that's what I think he's, he clearly loves the racing, and all the other stuff that comes with it isn't what you sign up for as a driver coming through the ranks. You're not starting in karting because you want to be interviewed by Ted Kravitz. Like, I'm not going to, come on.
Speak for yourself.
I was going to say, mate. Yeah, I love Ted.
You know what I mean? So it's, I guess, different drivers. Like, I mean, Albon hates the media stuff. Obviously, I had to get an Albon mention in there. He hates the media stuff, but I guess he's obviously not fighting for wins at the front. So, look, it's always going to be, like, it's sport at the end of the day. Like, everyone's got an opinion. Everyone's got a perspective, a view. Drivers are entitled to be upset, and I think people are entitled to... But I guess when it's the whole, like, when people have in their Twitter bio, like, they work for someone, but then, like, these views are my own. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like that thing.
But in real life.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Like Ted's allowed to feel that way. He's not the only person who feels that way. A lot of people don't feel that way. But, like, I guess when you're, like, representing Sky, who, again, this is why I kind of have a problem with Sky having the... they're kind of mainly responsible for kind of the world feed, in terms of that is the feed that,
most people.
Yeah, most kind of, because I think there should be like a UK feed and then a separate kind of world feed that has more, not just, because ultimately most of the commentators on Sky are British, and it's coming out of the UK as well. So I think that the whole British bias thing, like, no wonder, because probably they are a bit, but also, like, no one was having a go at Ziggo last year, who were the Dutch kind of. They were covering it in the Netherlands. Like, no one would begrudge them for supporting Max. So I think there should be, but then also that shouldn't be the world feed, in my opinion.
Yeah, I get that. I guess, like, maybe this the way it's blew up. I don't think it's just off this. I think it's like
straw that broke the camel's back.
I think it's like a build up of like everything, and I think this tiny comment is just, they've just went, right, nah, And obviously all the drama that's been going on, I think it's actually come at a really good time because they don't have to answer any questions about...
That's what it is. Red Bull, it's not a solidarity thing. They're just like...
We are just refusing to speak to anyone.
There's been about 40 men in like suits just in a boardroom going, this cost cap, we're going to blame it on Ted Kravitz.
You make a good point though, because like Red Bull have been top of the media talk for what feels like forever now. Like it seems like every week we are talking about Red Bull in like the Formula One sphere, and all other teams have kind of subsided. So yeah, the fact that they're now just like, nah, we're not going to talk to the media.
Well, let's carry on talking about Red Bull.
Aston Martin, by the way, because obviously we're going to go on the budget cap. They must be loving their life. Right?
Oh yeah, man. Procedural breach.
Oh yeah, they broke the law. No one cares. It's fine.
Thin ass plus ratio, like no one cares. Let's carry on talking about Red Bull because let's talk about like we kind of talked about it in the live show a little bit, but kind of let's break it down fully now.
Yeah.
Cost cap. I mean, if you're watching this, listening to this, you probably know what the transgression was. The penalty, 7 mil, 10% wind tunnel time for next year, CFD tunnel time for next year taken away. More than, if you think the penalty was correct, just say it was. And then if you don't think it was correct, because I've had my opinion and I got pretty flamed on it a couple of days ago by a lot of Verstappen profile pictures.
And I know how it went. Yep.
Yeah. So what do we feel about the punishment? Do you feel it's the right punishment? And if not, what would your punishment be? What do we think?
Death.
Straight into the deep end, but everyone involved.
Just a Christian Horner.
I think for me, the problem with it, because obviously the 10% taken away in terms of like wind tunnel time.
So 70 down to 63.
It ended up being 7, didn't it? Which is a lot because like if you compare that to Williams, like they've got 115% somehow. I don't actually know how that makes sense. But so they have more than the allotted amount. But it's almost double the amount that Red Bull will now have for next season, which is a lot. Like that is going to have like a pretty decent impact in terms of the amount of development that Williams can do and the amount of data and knowledge they're going to have in comparison to Red Bull. But obviously Red Bull have such a vast advantage anyway over teams like that it might even out a tiny bit, but not.
And they're
too
probably more efficient with their aero runs than certain other teams.
Exactly. Right? Yeah. And in comparison to Ferrari, sure, it's maybe like 10% less, but it's still, not a crazy amount. The problem for me is the fine. Because the fine, to me, now it makes no sense because it's not coming out of the cost cap. It's not coming out of the budget that they have now for next season. It's just give us 7 million quid, which is fine, but they clearly have the money to overspend because they've already done it. So money is not a problem.
Yeah.
Not for Red Bull GmbH, that's not a problem.
I mean, who cares? Like, the accountant's creasing whilst he's writing that down on the bank statement.
Just gets out his back pocket like spare.
Just down the sofa. There you go, mate. There's stuff that. So for me, that is pointless. I feel like that should come out of their budget for next season if they want to actually punish them with that. That just seems like a bit of an aesthetic thing of, we'll just make them pay 7 million.
It is the second biggest fine that anyone has ever had in Formula One, though. Like, it's quite a considerable fine that they've been given. So I feel like, if you were going to maybe...
But inflation.
I have no problem with the amount.
Inflation.
It's more just where it's coming from. It doesn't make any sense.
I feel like if it was a smaller fine, but it came from the cost cap, then maybe it would kind of even out a little bit. And as you said, the 10% on the wind tunnel time works out to be about 20 runs or so that they miss out on. And Red Bull already have the oldest wind tunnel of any of the 10 teams. So they're clearly pretty good at their aero testing, considering they're working with the worst actual wind tunnel. Yeah, exactly.
The back of his garden.
They're working with,
Literally,
they're working with the worst wind tunnel and still have created the best aerodynamic setup for the car this season.
Which speaks volumes for Red Bull as a team, as well. But strong feelings, Cam?
Like I said in the live stream, like obviously I don't have too much knowledge on the whole of the cost cap and everything, but I agree with your point in saying that it should, like, just from like a kind of looking on it from the outside, it should surely come out of a budget because, like you're saying, it's as if they've just done this for like the media to be like, look, we're punishing them, we're doing this, whereas like, is that even going to touch the sides with Red Bull? Like, I don't think so.
It's just the amount of money they have. Like, it's just not.
That's the thing. Like, coming up with whatever the correct punishment should be, shouldn't reflect the team that's had the transgression.
No, I
right?
hear that.
So when we're talking about this, it shouldn't be like, we should be talking about this in the same way as if it was Williams, right? And what kind of strikes me as unfair in this is that, say you've got a team that, I think Alfa Romeo were talking about how next year they're going to actually hit the cost cap for the first time. Because they've got some more sponsors in. So imagine you've got a team like they're just getting to the cost cap, and maybe they've like slightly gone over. If you give them a 7 million fine, well, that's all their money. So that is effectively going to come out of their cost cap potentially, which I don't think that, like, again, if we're looking at this regardless of Red Bull or Mercedes or Williams or whoever, I don't think that's right. That a big company like, not just, this could be Alpine. This could, like, they're owned by Renault, which is huge. They're like, McLaren have got a lot of, cash knocking about. They're hitting the cost cap for sure. So that, I have an issue with that. I definitely think it should have been taken out of the cost cap. I've heard that, there was I was chatting to an F1 journalist. He was saying about some of the team. Basically, the teams don't appear to support taking it out of the cost cap, because they are like, well, we might have to lay people off if you take that out of our cap. However, my response to that is that would be a choice. If you're hitting the cost cap, right? If you're hitting 145 million and you get 7 mil taken off of that, so it's 138. If you're laying people off for a 12-month penalty, right, and choosing to lay people off to offset that cost, that's a team's choice. They could spend less on catering if they want. They could spend less on car development. You know what I mean? So for me, that's not an excuse.
Yeah, you don't have to lose people if you just stick to the rules, like, realistically.
And also, if you do break it, well, then you as a company, like, if I'm employing, right, if I'm running a race team and I've got the choice between laying people off who are then gone versus like rehiring, like you're saying when companies didn't furlough people and just laid them off, like, and then now we're short staffed, like, you know what I mean? Like, for me, that's not an excuse. Like, I don't buy that. So and also from a sporting point of view, I think just maybe half is a bit much, but I think like take off way more than 10%, because I think you need to set a standards. It's not just about punishing the crime to reflect, because 400,000 might not sound like much of a transgression, and maybe it isn't, but it's about setting a standard so that no one even thinks about coming to near the cap.
So that's
why I think it should be harsher.
This is also my problem. Like, I want to reiterate this, because I think a lot of this talk always becomes really tribal. Like, if you go, well, I mean, it always does in F1 a lot of the time, but if you go, that's not really harsh enough, to be honest. Red Bull fans are like, yo, you must hate Red Bull. And I'm like, no, I just think that, like, in the interest of fairness, like, if you had a rule, if you had like consequences where if you go over the budget by a certain amount, you get the book thrown at you, no one's going to do it. Like, a £7 million fine and then like 10% or 7% of your testing taken off is still something that, like, a Mercedes could look at and go, that could be worth it if we did it.
And that shouldn't be.
It shouldn't be like a balancing act.
It should be like
the rules. Is it still worth it?
Because certain, like, I think Toto Wolff talked about, like, and it wasn't only him. Like, talked about leaving a tolerance, a degree of tolerance, because you want to get close, but you don't want to go over. And 9 of 10 teams didn't go over. Yeah. Like, if you want to play that game and go close to it, then that's a risk you take. And if you go over, then you get slammed. But, like, if you just make that punishment really big, like, surely no one's going to go near it. Like, and surely that's the point. We don't want to be like, we're talking about this 10 months after. What in another year we're going to be sat around talking about this bollocks again?
In November 2023, we'll be talking about 2022 again.
I fucking care about accounting. I care about cars going around fast. I just don't want to have to talk about this again. And that's why I think the rules should be so harsh. Like, we saw it with porpoising. Like, they haven't even implemented they implemented the thing, like, if you porpoise too much, you'll, like, get some, I can't even remember what the punishment is. But now, like, we don't see these cars porpoise anymore. And it's like, I didn't want to talk about porpoising. I don't want to talk about fucking accounting.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like, from Red Bull's point of view as well, it's kind of disrespectful to, like, the teams below them as well, because it's like the whole of the cost cap is that, it gives everyone, we all want to see the teams get closer together. And I think the cost cap obviously is going to aid that in the next few years when the lower teams, and I just think it's quite disrespectful to the rest of the pack that they're like, well, what the fuck? How can they just go over? But, like, because they've got the money too, whereas we can't.
And the thing is, no one knew exactly what the repercussions were going to be, because there was, like, a bunch of potential penalties. But also, I do want to also say, as much as like I know Christian Horner rubs a lot of people up the wrong way, like I don't begrudge him for doing his job, which is to defend and protect his team.
Yeah.
I don't begrudge him for that at all. But also they have overspent, so I think you kind of have to made your bed, you got to lie in it.
Yeah, I think it's like we're just like going back to the how they've handled it. They've definitely just deflected it onto like someone else and just went, it's not that big of a problem, is it? Yeah.
Oh, and this penalty, that's gonna take half. I'm sorry. 10% away from them is not taking half a second off the car. I don't believe that for a second.
That's impossible.
But obviously, again, it's in their best interest to. So I get it, but also it's what you choose to kind of believe, I suppose. 'Cause a lot of team principals come out with a bit of waffle every now and then.
Yeah, Christian Horner's done his job, right? Like he's
Exactly.
got to defend Red Bull, and like
Imagine he came out and was just like, yeah, fair enough. Yeah,
he's exaggerated a little bit, hasn't he? Like, you know, it's not going to cost them half a second because then 20 wind tunnel runs, like the percentages between the teams
The maths
already.
doesn't matter.
it's not adding up.
We're
It's
looking
really
at
not.
like 2024 and all the cars are within like a tenth of a second of each other, like because of how the
would
wind
be
tunnel
sick to be
testing
fair.
works.
Yeah.
That would be fine.
But I feel like he's come out, he's defended his team, and the FIA even slightly defended it. Like you said, the FIA came out and were like, it was in 13 different areas. They didn't really mean to.
Yeah, I don't think it was malicious.
The FIA almost
I
came out
agree.
and said it was
I agree.
unmalicious.
Yeah, which is very different to like the Briatore days when he was like telling drivers to crash into walls for Fernando Alonso wins. Talking to Fernando Alonso, we did again touch on this on the live show, but the Hamilton Alonso beef casserole. Which it's not the first time this year they've come to
these two come
the
together.
whole
This
Belgium incident.
half of the year.
Yeah,
This quarter.
That's what I mean. And I thought they kind of buried it there. This is based off quotes that have been attributed allegedly, because I haven't verified it myself. I haven't personally looked at the account, but I've heard it's all been going on. And for Lewis to respond to it, it must be like fairly legit. Basically, Fernando saying that Max's titles mean more than Lewis's because he's had to work for them harder, allegedly. How do we feel about these comments? Before whether it's kind of whether Fernando's in Lewis's head or vice versa, however people want to look at it.
True.
Like, yeah, do we agree with any of that sentiment at all?
It is mad that like Lewis and Alonso since 2007 have just had this like back and forth all the time. Like whenever one does anything, the other.
I feel like they'll retire and go pub together. Though. This is the great thing.
yeah.
I think after 15 years, they'd
Yeah.
like, bury the hatchet.
Yeah.
They should or just make like an energy drink together, call it
Yes.
like Trine or something.
Tried and tested that as well.
Yeah, prime. Good Logan Paul KSI settings.
I think surely it's bullshit. Like that them two mean more than it's bullshit. It like I believe that to be fact. Like then you can just pick apart everything. Like every championship means a hell of a lot. And if you were going to do a weight, like say they both weighed 7 and 2, I don't think the 2 wins, right?
Yeah.
So I think when we're talking about is it like before we're talking about the funniness of it, is it actually correct? Definitely fucking not.
Yeah.
I think it feels like, because it's come from Fernando Alonso as well, if you were going to pick one driver on the grid who you think would say it, it's going to be Fernando Alonso.
100%.
If it-
Valtteri Bottas never say
that's what I mean. If it would have come from Valtteri Bottas, it'd have been like, whoa.
You're out of order, Valtteri.
You were involved, mate. So what's going on here?
But Fernando Alonso chucks something out on the radio or something out to the press pretty much every weekend. He just loves stirring the pot, does Fernando. And I feel like this was just another opportunity. He was like, who's just won a championship? Max Verstappen's won a championship. Who do I not really like? Lewis Hamilton. Max Verstappen means more than Lewis Hamilton. Like, it's just like...
What's your
to be fair, it's like kind of obviously, on the face of it, like a title is a title, but it is like quite an interesting discussion of like, quite a few of Lewis's titles came against a teammate that was never anywhere near him. In terms of like, sorry, Valtteri, but like if we're being honest, like Valtteri's only won like 9 Grand Prix in total, right?
No,
Yeah.
he's above 10. He's above 10.
Is he above 10?
Yeah.
It's not as many as it should be.
It's not as many as it should be for like 4 seasons in a Mercedes. However many. But yeah, so I kind of get it from an ease perspective. So obviously Max's first title against Lewis Hamilton in a car that was like pretty close together, maybe even a Mercedes that was better on paper, whatever. But then this season, Max's title's been pretty easy. Like I know he's obviously won a lot of races, but Ferrari have thrown away races where they shouldn't have done. Sergio has never really been in a position to challenge him regularly. So you've got one title, yep, sure, he had to work quite hard for it. And you've got one here that he could have done in his sleep. You look at Lewis's, yeah, fine, there was the Bottas days, but there's also his first title, which he had to work very hard for in 08, winning that on the final race of the season in Brazil.
This is what I mean, like, points never tell the full story. This championship, this 2022, will be looked back on, and we're already talking about it as like Red Bull, Verstappen dominance. Well, yes, that's how the points reflect it, but actually the Ferrari car has been very close to Red Bull, if not quicker at the start of the season.
Oh, yeah, it literally
that
was.
will be forgotten. And this is the thing, like, when we're talking about seasons and reflecting, like, when we talk about, I don't know, like, Schumacher 2003, it's like, you have to actually look past the points sometimes. Like, the amount of times, like, Montoya would get really close, but then, like, the Williams would blow up or whatever. Like, there's way more. If you want to actually, like, break these championships down, like, there is more. And it's definitely like waffle from Alonso, no doubt. Like,
We're just summarising it there and then.
It is, but to be fair, credit Alonso. He came out afterwards and basically tweeted saying, "Please, all the titles are amazing, well deserved and inspiring, incomparable to each other," which is true. "And let's enjoy champions and legends of the current time. Tired of continuous search for headlines." But then he's
bottled it.
He did.
He shit his pants.
He's seen 270k likes in the Lewis tweet. He's like,
By a photo, no caption.
He got ratioed
Yeah.
so bad.
He went, I didn't really mean it though, did I?
But that's kind of what happened at Spa as well.
Yeah.
Because he was like, "Oh, Lewis only wins from the front," and then they kind of memed it, and then they were like friends afterwards.
But that also feels so Alonso, doesn't it? Like when he just takes it back at the end, he's like, "No, actually, don't worry."
But also,
about
this
it."
is what kind of ultimately as well. Like, for me, it's just not that deep.
Yeah, 1,000.
Like, it's and like, people take it so, because people like feel this, oh, I'm a Verstappen or a Hamilton or Alonso or a Norris or whoever fan, like any driver, and like, oh, I've got to like defend them, and I've got to like mate, I'm sure it's not that deep, and like people go way too overboard in like defending the dignity of their like
it's your
their honor.
perspective as well, isn't it? Like if you look at, say, like the Mercedes dominance era, if you're a Hamilton fan, you look at that and you're like, yeah, Hamilton won back-to-back titles, was so dominant for that entire time. If you're a Sebastian Vettel fan, you probably think of the couple of seasons where Sebastian Vettel like looked like he might have a chance. Or like if you're a Charles Leclerc fan this season, you look at the points and you're like, oh, how is Charles Leclerc so far off? I've really thought Charles Leclerc had a chance at the beginning of the season, like many did.
If things went slightly differently.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, as you say, the points don't tell the whole story. And when we look back at it in 20 years' time, we're going to see Max Verstappen 14, possibly 16 wins, more points in a season than anybody has ever got, possibly the best win percentage of anybody. And the points are going to point towards Max Verstappen having technically the best season of anyone.
Yeah.
where
It doesn't really tell the whole picture.
No.
yeah, I think that's completely right, because it's like when it's just hard to kind of like, because the statement he said, okay, is like such a strong statement, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think when you're saying it's not too deep, if Lewis believed, he doesn't, but if he believed in 1% that his 7 titles didn't mean as much as what they should have, he probably would have had the notes page out, full paragraph, because he knew it wasn't deep. He was like, you know what, bang, photo of me above Alonso.
That's what I mean.
Yeah. So it literally, why would you get like fighting for Lewis when Lewis isn't even fighting it himself?
I do think it is a bit, I don't know. This is what I mean. Like, we're kind of commenting and we're all talking about a relationship between two human beings who know each other, like have known each other for 15 years, and they've got their, and like not everyone gets along. Like it's fine. It's kind of like the whole, well, actually this is another interesting point, like Gasly and Ocon. So like there's, for anyone who doesn't know, Gasly and Ocon grew up together in kind of north of France, karted together. They'd have dinner at each other's like parents' houses. Like they were really close growing up. They both made it to F1. They're going to be teammates next year. But then they had some incidents on track. There's so many rumours of Le Beef. That's good.
Le Beef, yeah.
Le Beef. It's just sweet beef. And obviously going into next year, there's a lot of like... There's a lot of talk of like, will they be able to like get along? Will they be able to park it? And like any potential beef in the future. I mean, do we have like a strong opinion on that either? Because it's only really been spoken about from Pierre's point of view. So it would be interesting to hear Esteban's kind of perspective on it all. But looking at the Alpine announcement, they seemed all happy families, right?
Yeah.
Like, will that work next year?
I feel like they'll park it just because of where they are in the standings. Like if Alpine were right at the top and it was Ocon and Gasly fighting for a title, similar to what we saw with Hamilton and Rosberg.
That
blow
is
up.
going
Then-
supernova.
Yeah,
mate.
then it would just be like the worst thing that
They're just
Alpine could
at
have
each
done.
other's throats on Twitter. They're just like beefing each other on Twitter.
During the race.
No, you know, like Instagram Live when you get two people on it. You're a dickhead.
Yeah.
But like because they're still trying to bridge that gap to like the top three, assuming that Alpine come fourth in the championship this season.
Yeah.
They're still miles off of Ferrari, Mercedes, and Red Bull, right? So they need to work as a team for the best of both of their careers because they need that Alpine to keep taking steps forward. Whereas like if that Alpine goes from fourth in the championship to ninth in the championship next year, they've smashed into each other 5 times. Suddenly they're like, right, one of you's going. No,
Well, this is what
Is
happened
it?
racing Force India, with Sergio Perez and Esteban Ocon.
I was
back in the
literally about
day.
to bring that up in terms of like
They weren't
just,
fighting for nothing.
Yeah, they just kept slapping into each other. Even Grosjean and Magnussen for a bit.
Oh, my goodness.
Haas, they were just at the back.
yeah.
They just kept crashing into each other for no reason. So the thing is, I feel like with Gasly and Ocon, they've not had. I want to say they've not had many incidents on track.
Not too many
Together.
notable ones.
I want to
no.
say they had like a crash in France once. I just remember because
Yeah,
it was like
they
two
did.
French
Yeah.
comms and they crashed into each other in France.
Yeah.
But like they've not done it before that much, so I want to say they won't do it again that much.
But I wonder
this
if
point onwards.
I wonder how much drivers. Well, we know, Lewis has said this multiple times about Verstappen kind of over, not just last year either. Like, I'm sure certain drivers race certain other drivers differently. Like, I imagine there's some who are known for like giving more space, and you can go wheel to wheel. I think a lot of drivers talk about Kimi Räikkönen in that way. Like, you can go wheel to wheel with Kimi, and he would always kind of leave you with the space, as Alonso famously once said.
Yeah, I forgot who was saying it, but it's like what we're saying with like Lewis and Max, so dirty at times, like last year. Whereas Charles and Max, like it's kind of they kind of give each other a bit of respect, like with space and wise and everything like that. So I think they definitely do. Well, of course you're going to treat someone differently because of the style, aren't you, and the way that they drive, because you're going to think in the back of your head, oh, if I try and squeeze through this gap, he's going to take me out or something like that.
Well, this is, I guess, obviously Leclerc and Verstappen kind of grew up together, karting, racing together, so they kind of know how each other race. I think Verstappen was very much like, Lewis is the kind of king, I need to come in here, like all guns blazing, and like, push him off. Because he was objectively guilty of that numerous times last year. But honestly, my main issue with that isn't with Max, it's with, like Brazil was just a joke. Like, you can't push someone that far off and not get penalised for it.
Yeah.
That sets a standard. But yeah, I guess like everyone kind of approaches racing differently. And I think, like I've been impressed with Max's he's been much more level this year, I feel.
Do you think it is a maturity thing then? Because you talk about Kimi Räikkönen, obviously throughout his career, but also as he progressed, like you don't really talk about this like hot-headedness with drivers as they come towards the end of their career. But maybe that's also because they take a step down the grid.
Also, Kimi wasn't concentrating at the end of his career.
Yeah, that's very
And when he just drove into the back of Giovinazzi in Portugal. Whoops, sorry.
But like
I took out
switched off
Seb
there for a
in
second.
Austria. Like, oh, my bad.
But you don't hear it with like, I don't know, Sebastian Vettel either. Like no one comes after the race and it's like, oh, Sebastian Vettel, you just can't go anywhere near him. You know what I mean? Whereas like with some inexperienced drivers or drivers that are a little bit slower, we hear about, teams talking about people like Tsunoda, Latifi, who maybe you give them that extra bit of space, but it's not because of the respect you have for them. It's because you're a little bit worried about what they might do.
Is it a bit like a puppy? Is it gonna-
Well, obviously, Ricciardo went for a bold move on Tsunoda today and didn't get the space, which maybe he wasn't entitled to it. Maybe he was. What do we think now? We've seen that incident a few times.
Yeah,
Ricciardo,
10-second
Tsunoda.
penalty was given. Do we think that was,
I think that was harsh.
yeah, straight off the bat, I think that's kind of harsh.
Obviously, I feel like I'm biased because Daniel Ricciardo's my favourite driver, but I do think there wasn't a lot of space there for him to go. But like, just being honest, like there was a tiny bit, but then the argument is obviously, did Tsunoda just completely not give him any space? But surely 10 seconds.
Yeah,
That's
a bit much.
Well, we couldn't tell watching it, and then 10, 5 fair play, but 10. I just felt like it was quite heavy on him.
Yeah, because 10 seconds are kind of...
That's
They're
what
not really
Lewis got.
giving out that
Lewis
many,
got Silverstone when he crashed with Verstappen, and Verstappen he got a 10-second penalty.
Yeah.
But was it a stop-go? Or was it a 10-second drive
it was
through?
just a 10...
I can't actually remember if it was a drive through. I don't think it was a drive through. I think
he just got 10 seconds.
Yeah, so same penalty.
It's kind of rare to get 10 seconds. I feel like a lot of the time, collision
Russell
from
Sainz-
5.
Yeah.
For me, if you were going to give 10 seconds, like I thought Russell should have got more than 5. He took Sainz out. And I guess maybe that's the logic they're applying, even though that really shouldn't be the way it is. I think with that incident at Mexico, I think the problem was Ricciardo was like just sliding a little bit. The corner.
Yeah, they
Like,
say that if you're
he's out
not
of
fully in control
Yeah.
and you're the attacking driver, we've seen this like a few times. If they don't deem you to be fully in control, then you'll probably get a penalty, because the emphasis, the responsibility is on the driver attacking to not crash into, which is why, but Russell's was like slam dunk, like, fully on George, and he gets 5 seconds. I don't know, but we always talk about consistency in Formula One, which is kind of...
It's because they don't use the same stewards every week.
No.
I know you get that kind of in a sense with football and like, referees and stuff, but you get referees on a different weekend. But I feel like an entire body should kind of stick together each race. They don't get a new rule book. They don't get... Imagine the FA just go, let's do this today. I don't know.
Does that mean it's based on someone's opinion then? Like, rather than actual factual, here it is in the rule book, if you're saying it's different stewards, because, like you say, it's 2 similar incidents.
So obviously it will like, in terms of like the general guidance will stay the same, but like at the end of the day, a guy will look at it and go, well, no, it's not quite as simplified, but like we'll kind of go, I think we kind of all collectively think this is the guy that's at fault here based on screenshots and a bit of telemetry.
Based on educated opinions at the end of the day. It's kind of like sometimes in football, like a handball, you'd be like, well...
Like VAR, kind of.
Yeah, and it's like what's unnatural position. Well, no, they basically have like a VAR
I guess,
in F1 now, don't they? Like
everyone just stops the cars on the grid.
Goes and looks at the screen at the side. Yeah.
Penalty!
I don't know. Like gets out of the car, walks over.
Oh my God, imagine that.
That would add to the spectacle.
That's actually a great idea, because obviously F1, and that's part of, I think, how F1's changing a lot now, and hopefully with these new regulations as they mature, the one thing I think will stop Max from checking out, and I think why we need to hopefully look at these next few years differently, is because of the cost cap. It's a new thing. Teams could just run away in development in the past. I hope that, in a few years, more teams will be, because everyone should eventually converge at the front. But obviously that's a generation we won't see Sebastian Vettel in. Because I wanted to mention Zeb. He wasn't a terrible race. Like, he was ahead of Lance by the end. Like, Aston Martin were clearly a bit slow here. But what do we make of Vettel retiring on such a, because there's clearly still a very, 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 very talented racing driver there. Do we think it's the right decision? Because Ralph Schumacher, I know he put a quote out saying like, if Seb was making the choice now, he would choose to stay. Do we think that's the case? Or do we think he's already fully checked out?
I saw, I don't know if it was an article or something, but I saw something relating to saying that he would stay. Like, because he was talking about, obviously he knows it's his last race at every one of these circuits, and that he's getting that feeling like, I'm actually sad now that I'm not.
Well, I know after Suzuka, he was like, I'll come back on a one-off as long as it's Suzuka, because he just loves that track.
Yeah, but you would, because I think once you make that decision, you're like, oh shit, this is actually the best job in the world, and I don't have to leave it. It's my choice to leave it. So that's like...
Schumacher came back.
Well, that's the thing, right? He didn't make it for racing reasons.
Yeah.
Was kind of the way that it was portrayed anyway. He made it because he wanted to be with his family more often, because he wanted to take a little step away from the sport, and because he didn't really like the direction the sport was going in. 2026, we haven't mentioned that Audi are coming in. German manufacturer.
Confirmed.
Bring him back.
That's a very good point.
That is a good point. Like how, like obviously, we'll maybe come back to Vettel just quickly, but like in terms of Audi coming in, they're going to partner with Sauber, I guess. You're not going to see Alfa Romeo
Correct.
on the grid. How is that going to affect Sauber, do we reckon? Because they've always had like crazy facilities, right? But just kind of always been.
But
renting
not the
them.
budget to get the most out of the facilities by the sounds of it. I mean, they haven't finished higher than P6 in the constructors since 2009. 2007 and 8 were great.
Oh, the Kubica days.
BMW Sauber, what a beautiful car that was.
Audi Sauber. Ooh,
There's a good ring to it. I feel like it makes, when you've got that factory support, and I don't know, maybe this is just me, even though Renault are a factory, and I know it's Alpine, but it's essentially Renault, I've just never taken Renault as seriously as I would take a Mercedes or a Ferrari or even a McLaren, to be honest. But I think, that's going to, give them the money, give them the clout. I think that's where that's really important. Audi are going to be making their own engines. I think that's big for the team, for sure.
Yeah, it's massive, right? Especially coming in as a new engine manufacturer and knowing that they're kind of working towards 2026. I was a little bit worried that Audi might just be like, okay, we'll take over the team for a couple of years before 2026 and we'll start to work on the car and the engine. But it seems like they've gone, no, 2026 is our year. You can be Sauber for a couple of years. That's absolutely fine. But we're coming in 2026 and we're just going to change up basically everything that is there. We're putting our own engine in. We're going to get our own people in. We're going to make it an Audi team. And we kind of saw that with Mercedes, right? Mercedes were the last big German manufacturer to come into Formula One. They took over Brawn at that point and have just taken it from strength to strength to strength. So if Audi are looking at that same kind of project map, it can only be good for Sauber, I think.
Oh, we're finished. It's the German efficiency, isn't it? This is what it is. Because I remember, I don't really watch much endurance racing or anything anymore. But when I was a kid, I'd slap Le Mans on for 6 minutes, then realise, oh my god, I've got to be up for 24 hours. I can't do that. But they obviously were crazy in endurance racing. They have good motorsport pedigree and know how to win things. And I feel like they are going to take Sauber to the next level, probably.
And that was the whole point of these regulations, right? To make the sport more appealing, particularly for manufacturers. I think that's why, F1 have been very happy and keen to get Audi through the door, and less so Andretti. So obviously Andretti aren't a big manufacturer, and they're still trying to get in. But they're obviously, their connection is obviously, Michael Andretti. That's the kind of, the way in. But they don't bring the same clout that a big Audi, big name like Audi do bring. Although I was thinking one day, because I did a series about what if whoever joined F1, and I was thinking about doing Audi, but the supermarket, because that'd be good. I'd love to see that livery.
Aldi.
Yeah.
Aldi.
Yeah. Just imagine.
What, as a team? As Aldi Motorsport?
Benetton used to own a team and they're clothing brands. So why can't supermarket?
AlphaTauri.
Just people.
AlphaTauri clothing.
When Aldi have got the Greggs, just people, the race suits, just Greggs.
They've got that middle aisle in Aldi, haven't they? Where it's just
got anything. So just put that on the car, just try and fix
Mate, imagine if we've just all got it wrong and it actually is Audi.
It's
in the
Aldi,
supermarket.
it's actually Aldi.
But they're German as well. They're still German.
Why didn't you choose Lidl? Why not Aldi? Was it the A? Audi? Because Lidl would also be... Imagine Aldi and Lidl competing at the front. Oh my god, the bakery section for Lidl would take them over the edge.
You'd have Verstappen themed cupcakes.
The rivalry would be fucking amazing.
That would be mad. Well, Lidl would have a great livery because it's
They're kind of similar though, no? It's yellow and blue for both of them.
Yeah.
Would it be like sister teams, Audi and Lidl?
I reckon they
Red
don't
Bull
get
and
on.
AlphaTauri.
I reckon they don't get on. I reckon
Oh,
there's
you
beef
reckon?
there.
There's beef?
I reckon there's.
Right, should we just do supermarket Formula One?
Yeah, what's
Sainsbury's
Sainsbury's.
probably better high budget.
Wait,
Just take over
High
from
budget to me as well.
take over from McLaren.
Yeah, Sainsbury's right. Waitrose comes in.
Waitrose.
M&S food.
That'll be
M&S food down the inside. It's imagine
That's
actually.
you've got Mark and Spencer there.
Oh yeah, man, that's true. What about this has really gone on a tangent. I wasn't expecting, but you know what? I'm here for it.
Ocado F1.
Well, no, you got Jumbo, who are Max's sponsors. They're a Dutch supermarket.
Oh, we're
They
living.
are. They're a Dutch, and oh my god,
Well,
E. Leclerc, French supermarket chain. E. Leclerc. It's literally E. Leclerc, spelled the same as Charles. They are a French
Oh,
supermarket
we're
chain.
sorted. Charles got his own team, mate.
He's literally got his own team.
As if they named it after him. That's crazy.
If you've got supermarkets, then you've got to include like Best One and Londis. Like they've got to come in the other back.
Like F2.
Poundland in Formula Regional.
Now they're IndyCar.
Yeah. All the news agents and stuff. Flipping
Oh my God.
Martin McColl's.
This is such a. I swear there's a video in this.
Yeah, definitely.
This is it. This
I'll
is
race
the
you
video.
to it.
Yeah, exactly. We'll do that. Oh, well, you know what, boys? I think that's a great place to end it. That's a fantastic place to end it.
Delirious.
Everyone who got to the end as well,
Yeah.
they got a treat.
I feel like people should let me know in the comments, like, what supermarket do you think would finish top
Yeah.
of the grid?
Yeah. What supermarket would win the championship?
Yeah, what would be top? What would be last?
Yeah.
Formula Market.
Yeah, that's it.
What we're saying.
Make it happen. Well, thank you to everybody who's watched and listened and liked and subscribed. I'm sure you've done it already, so I don't have to remind you. Cam, JB, thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having us again. I'll speak of me off.
I'll let my representative do my talking.
Yeah, so it's fine. But yeah, cheers everyone for coming. Niran, I'll let you finish it up.
Well, yeah, it's been a
Wise
sensational one. From wise words, I ain't got wise words in my locker,
enjoyed
mate. That was really good. Really swept.
I
over the
wonder
end
how
of the
production is
supermarket.
going to title that supermarket talk at the end.
Supermarket.
I'll be in the comments as well looking, so he's better commenting.
Yeah. I'm interested to see the title suggestions later from there.
Fair comment. Well, yeah, make sure to stick around because there will be a supermarket clip out there, hopefully, on the YouTube channel. That'll be great. I'd love to see it. Make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the full pod, if you enjoyed the show, the live show, obviously, as well. We're back for another pod in between Mexico and Brazil. And then we're back, of course, for the live show there for that Grand Prix, which should be sick. Should be a banger. Like and subscribe over on YouTube, on Spotify. Give us a 5-star rating. On Surfshark, give us a decent rating.
I'm pretty sure that's how that works, isn't it?
Yeah, sort us out.
You can do it on like multiple countries' accounts. That's not a Surfshark ad.
And safe and secure, all that jazz. Thank you once again, YouTube, for coming on. It's been great. It's been a pleasure. And we'll see you soon. Adios. I'm back at Argos. I think Argos should have a place.